The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is Wednesday.
No, not Wednesday already.
Hump Day, and a day after a city council meeting where, again, we see the fact that nothing that's ever said in front of the city council
is accurate.
Can be taken as being actual fact. Everything is subject to revision, including whether or not we pay
a bill.
We paid for snow removal.
Yeah, you know, after Mary Sahadi answered the questions initially during the Finance Committee meeting about the transfer of money to pay off the snow removal from 2015, it was moved to send it to the full council. I then went to city councilors Ponte and Pereira and said, didn't the mayor say that those bills were paid? And she goes, you know what? I think you're right. He said that right here in the budget hearings. I said, I believe so. And then Joe Good from the Herald News and Alan Zarek from WSAR both said, he said that to us. He said that at an editorial board meeting at the Herald News, and he said it on the air at WSAR. So we have proof that he said this. So when it came up during the full council meeting, Linda asked the question. Council Pereira asked the question. Didn't the mayor say this bill was paid? And it was, well, I checked with the Herald News and WSAR, and they said the mayor did say that. He said it in interviews. So was the bill paid? Mary Sahadi goes, oh, well, you know, I think that what the mayor meant to say was that we have the funding to pay it.
Oh, well, he's only the mayor, and, you know, he's the chief. So now we have to, interpret what the mayor says. Now we have to guess what the mayor says. If he says a bill, you know, I do that all the time. You know, if I walk up to you and say, you know, CJ, I paid you, I paid the bill for your electricity, and then a week later I say, oh, you got to transfer some money from your savings account to your checking account, and you go, why? Well, I got to pay the electric bill, and you say, well, you said you already paid it. No, I actually meant that after you transferred money this week, I could pay it.
Next week, right.
And by the way, it's a little late. You know, that's, look, this is ludicrous again. It just speaks to, you know, to the lack of transparency, the lack of accuracy of this administration. This has happened time and time again. And then we have everybody else, including the mayor. He'll run to the radio this afternoon and make excuses like he always does and blame everybody else. And first it was I didn't know what happened. Then it was I didn't know what I was signing. Now it's the auditor's fault, and let's see who we can throw under the bus today. But the fact is, when he gets in, he was at a budget hearing, by the way.
Right.
So, you know, you think you'd be accurate about the budget, since, you know, that's the most critical aspect of this city, having the money to run the city and knowing exactly how much you've spent and how much you're going to spend. So, you know, this is the whole thing, the lack of transparency. Just as in your citizens' input, you talked about the Crisis Stabilization Center. Now, we have the emails, and the city council got the emails. And again, here we have another issue. The neighborhood wasn't informed.
The public wasn't informed.
The public wasn't informed. And what is the mayor doing? In that email, did that individual not thank the mayor for his cooperation?
Yes.
To bring more people with addiction problems to the city of Fall River. I got 2 calls this morning from irate people complaining about baby Bella, or baby Doe as she was originally known, and about the mother, because they said to me, why are they waiting for a bed to open in Fall River? Aren't there other treatment facilities in the state? I thought that it was a first come, first serve on beds, and that's why some Fall River people may go out of the community and other people from other communities come to our community, but it appears that the only place in the state is Fall River. And now we're holding a bed. Why isn't first available bed? And I said, you have a point, but the problem is they have every intentions of making Fall River the dumping ground for the rest of the state. Do you think Hyannis, the rich Cape, in the midst of their tourist season, you think they want people who need crisis stabilization wandering around Main Street in Hyannis? No, they're going to ship them to Fall River. They don't, Fall River, they don't care what walks around their streets. Well, we do. And we're trying to put a lid on bringing people in. And if we do bring them in, we're going to ensure that they go back to where they came from. And, so now we know that the mayor is clandestinely pursuing this. We know he's in favor of expansion of beds down and in the north end. And now we know that he's actively courting more to come in without informing the neighborhood. And to me, that's absolutely unacceptable. I don't have a problem with this community taking care of this community, but we cannot begin to make this the dumping ground for the entire, not only the state of Massachusetts, there are other states that are sending people here. Well, and they're not sending them to Hyannis. Right. And by the way, I believe.
Let's send them to Hyannisport.
It said that they were buying the entire property.
Right.
But they're going to turn the rectory, which could have been sold as a residential occupancy that paid taxes. They brought in another nonprofit that doesn't pay anything with more opioid issues, and they bought the entire property. So what do you think? Maybe in my crystal ball, I foresee them using some of that, the rest of that property, to expand. Exactly. At some point in time, and bring more people like this, more people into Fall River, that realistically, we should be doing just the opposite. Our position should be, we're going to stop, people, Texas and California, and border states have issues with illegals crossing the borders. We've got legals that are coming into our community and staying here. And as I said before, I understand the way the law is situated, but the fact is that they come here for treatment, they should go back. And actually on the national news, they said there's a new program, and I forgot what state it was, which is having tremendous success. And you know what that is? In-home treatment. And you know why it's successful? Because they teach the addict to deal with all the triggers that created their addiction in their own home, where they have their support system. And guess what? That. So imagine that. But these communities are sending us the people. Do you really think they're sending us the affluent people who are addicted? No, they're staying in their community. They're staying with their families because they got the money. It's like when Castro got, cleaned out Cuba. He didn't send us all the doctors and the lawyers and the physicists. He sent us all the criminals. So what do we get when we get these people to Fall River and they dump it? They dump the worst. And
of course.
That's the problem.
Well, we're definitely not Hyannisport, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure if we were, the Kennedys would be having something to say about it. But, this is just the whole thing. This mayor is doing everything secretively. And as I said in my citizens' input yesterday, are we going to have another thing like the King Phillip MIll? Because, again, many people are upset about King Phillip MIll, except for the political whores who were there last night. Alan Sylvia, Michelle Dion, what's her name, Darcy, who all gave citizens input about where this is perfect. I mean, Michelle Dion even went so far as to say that the fire chief said to her that if there's a fire in the King Phillip MIll, they're going to set up a perimeter, and anyone inside that perimeter is going to die because they're not going to take care of them.
I do not believe that.
I don't believe that for a moment either. But this is what a proposed city council candidate just said yesterday to the city council, that a perimeter will be set up and anyone inside that perimeter will be dead. Is that any way to live?
Well, I find, that's an absurdity. That's an absurd, because number one, the primary duty of a fire department is life safety, and then property protection. And believe me, I'm I know that, you know, I mean, you can't ever say nobody would die because obviously a major fire of that magnitude. But I can tell you one thing. We lost a church in 34, 3 decades. And in, you know, a couple of city blocks. And there's still pictures of them going up like match heads, not a little bit at a time, but it's called flashover, at the Notre Dame Church. And I spent 28 hours at that fire, and nobody died because our primary function initially was to ensure that everybody was evacuated that was in jeopardy.
Right.
And you know, I mean, to say that the fire chief would say something like that is doing a disservice because I know him. I worked with him, and I know that he, you know, I mean, I'm sure if he said people would die, I mean, you know, if that mill does go up and it goes up in the middle of the night and it went unattended, like any major fire, there's always that possibility. But to say that in that context that she put it in is extremely, extremely misleading, and it is dangerous.
But again, this is a scare tactic so that the city council and the people in the South End jump on board with this deal, which was a cushy deal for the developer, because Kathy Ann Rivera said you must be willing to bid $585 to be in the auction. So several developers said, no, it's not worth $585. I'm not going to do that. And then the one gentleman who said it is worth the $585 went and then got it for $110. Guess what? It was $585. That's it. It didn't go. Too bad. You're out of luck. Pay the $585 or get out of the way.
Yeah.
And now there's $99,000, which may have to be paid back to the city because it was given by CPA money. So that may have to be paid back to the CPA. So they got $110,000 for it, minus $99,000. So they got what? $20,000?
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, you know, as you said, CJ, with that whole thing, they said you had to put up $585. And they basically had a lot of bidders that said, look, I'm not going to pay that much. They might have paid more. So if they did it, and the only bidder walked in and he said, okay, it was starting at $585, and he just sat there and said, well, I could put it up, but I'm not going to pay for it.
Right.
I'm not going to pay that much. And he just waited till it got to a price that he liked. That's not saying that, you know, when you say you got to put up $585, that's got to be the minimum bid. And if you don't get it, you got to open it up to rebid, because we could have had a bidding war, and instead of getting 110, we could have got 250 or 280
exactly,
or something like that. And it was, you know, so it hurt the taxpayers of Fall River. But again, somebody that's connected gets the deal. Like, and again, a Hyannis guy gets this, is gonna, you know, he's moving in, and he thanked them twice, I believe, in that email at the beginning and at the end.
Right.
You know, again, thank you for, you know, so thank you for making a backroom deal without telling anybody that lives in the Flint and who lives near Thomas Street or County Street, you know, that you're going to do this. It's crazy.
Right, and as I said in my citizens input time, we have designated medical areas in the city. Why they designated Pleasant Street one was for Primacare. Then you have St. Anne's and you have Charlton. Those areas surrounding those facilities. Those are the medical areas. Put the crisis center in the medical area. That's why Corrigan is in that medical area. It's a medical area. Those are medical areas. What are we going to do? Now I'm going to add it to the Flint so that that's a medical area? You know what, Mr. Mayor? Why don't you do this? Why don't you go out, have the city take all these triple deckers that you don't like, that you want market rate housing for, and have the city take them by eminent domain and throw up lots of market rate housing and lots of opiate treatment centers. Because I think that's what you want to do anyhow.
Yeah. Well, I got a better idea. We've got, what, 89 properties on the list?
Yeah.
Why don't we, look, this is just an idea. Why don't we take those properties that are doing nothing for the community, except being a burden and being a, you know, potential hazard due to fires, et cetera, or becoming or it could become a shooting gallery or a flop house for indigents, and then they end up setting fire to the place and maybe dying. Why don't we take those properties, since we already have them, and then why don't we look around and do what Jimmy Carter did? Why don't we see if we can find some federal grant money, state grant money, to rehab those properties and sell them at a very low cost to veterans, people who have served their country, who have come home and maybe don't have the money for a large mortgage and put it on the tax rolls again.
Oh, what a smart idea.
What a horrible idea that is.
I mean,
Isn't that a horrible idea?
Horrible.
Why don't we give it to some people, veterans and low-income people who always wanted a house, and they have to pay their taxes, obviously, but they're going to get it at a reasonable amount. Veterans can then get obviously they can look at VA mortgages and things like that. You know, but no, what are we going to do with this property? We're going to let it lay derelict till one of the cronies can make money on the deal, and then we'll dump it. Because how long did the King Phillip MIll remain? Until somebody who obviously has got a political in, because, you know, they went in and said we can pay over $500,000 for this mill, and then they went into a bid with the only bidder and said, yeah, I can put it up, but I'm not going to, so I'm just going to let you drop the figure. And I know some of those other people that were interested in bidding would have paid at least 110 and possibly double that or triple that. So who lost out in this process? The people of Fall River and the taxpayers of Fall River. And again, no transparency at all. The Flint Neighborhood Association was not informed of this, and feel free.
Neither were any of the abutters.
That's right, and any of the abutters, and feel free to contact the Flint Neighborhood Association and ask if they were informed about this, because they weren't.
I have a pizza delivery for Steve Camara.
No, pizza. No, Steve Camara no longer works here. You'll have to find him somewhere else.
That was the biggest.
Apparently, the guy's still looking for him from last night's council meeting. So.
That was one of the funniest moments in the city council meeting I've ever seen. And I think Joe Good said it best in her Twitter feed, where she said, "Now I've seen it all."
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you, it was funny. It was. Yeah. But, you know, city council president took great offense at it. There is somebody on Facebook who is haphazardly taking credit, although not taking credit. We kind of know who did it, and his name actually came up several times after the meeting outside. And, you know, Dr. Mike from the radio station turned around and said, and this is why Fall River is the laughingstock of this state and the entire New England, because we don't even take our own government serious. Well, yes and no.
Yeah. You got to do it to stop from crying. And, you know, and in a way, you know, I disagree with him. The reason Fall River is not taken seriously is because our government doesn't act seriously.
That's right.
Because why hasn't the city council taken positions about things like this, about things like the King Phillip MIll bidding? Why has the city council remained silent while the state dumps every conceivable opioid-addicted person that they can find in Fall River? Why are they silent while we get answers like, oh, the mayor was on the radio, and he said, well, you know, I don't know what everybody's worried about. You know, there's no limit on how much we can spend.
I know, I thought that was funny.
So that's an excuse?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I guess you're right, Mr. Mayor. We're lucky that Mr. Aguiar didn't rent a Lamborghini, you know, and stay in a Waldorf Astoria rather than a Ritz. Or maybe if he stayed in a Ritz, we're lucky he only got one room rather than getting the entire floor for the Rockstar party.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, that is the most ludicrous statement I have ever heard in my life, and the most insensitive statement I have ever heard for the taxpayers of Fall River, that you actually get on the air and say, well, you know, it's like going up when they triple the price of gasoline, and they go, well, be happy we didn't increase it even more. Well, no, that's not a plausible response. You know, you're gouging the people. So, well, be happy it only went up to $5, not to $10. Well, okay, but, you know, and that's what disturbs me. And then, to make it to exacerbate the problem, Councilor Joe Camara is opposed to putting limits on spending.
I know.
I mean, really? Joe, come on. We know that, we know that anything the mayor says, you're going to agree with. But on this one, come on, Joe, it's an election.
Well,
maybe the people were watching, and maybe they know that taking this position means you don't care about the taxpayers.
And here's what the mayor said on the radio, and here's what Joe Camara said at the city council meeting last night.
Screw you, taxpayer!
So, yeah,
message was loud and clear.
Oh, absolutely. So let's look at this thing from the beginning. Mike Aguiar gets caught. First, the mayor says, I don't know anything about it. Then we prove he did. And now he says, well, I don't look at what I sign. And then he gets in trouble for that. And then he says, well, the auditor looked at it. And we know that the auditor only adds the numbers up. He doesn't make any ruling on it, on whether it was, applicable or not, and fair. And then he goes on the radio and says, well, I guess I can't say I didn't know about it. I guess I don't look at what I'm signing is going to work. Throwing the auditor under the bus is a wheel chalk. That won't work. So I'll just get on the air and say, hey, just be happy we didn't spend even more. Good work. No. I can't wait for the next episode in As the Taxpayer Gets Screwed.
And you know, what was worse was Joe Camara turned around and said, well, look, at least it was only a year this time. It took 3 years for the window. You know what? It doesn't matter. It shouldn't have taken a year. It shouldn't have taken a day. It shouldn't have happened. And then you've got the fact that, and please tell me if I'm wrong in assuming this or thinking this. Mike Aguiar resigned. He left the building. Mm-hmm. Linda Pereira had everything embargoed, meaning she had it all seized and put away and went into Kathy Eververis' office. His office was locked. But he was in City Hall removing things from the office. And the office had like police tape or something in front of it with a big sign on it.
Caution tape, I think.
Yeah.
Caution tape, yeah.
Yeah, some type of tape in front of it. So when you get fired or you resign, do you go back to your place of employment to go clean out your office? Normally, you clean it out as you're walking out the door.
Yeah, it's normally you're fired, clean out your stuff, and
leave.
And get out of here and leave anything that the city owns, like your computers and stuff, here.
Right.
But there are actually now, again, as it always is in Fall River, there's always another addition. Part B. now we're not sure if it's in Kathy Ann's office.
Right.
It may be in Mike Aguiar's office with the caution tape on the door.
Right.
Which they open and close at will, so nobody can, it's not like they're going to run out of caution tape. So, so we don't really know if they truly have been embargoed.
And the other big question is, where's all the equipment that was purchased with this grant money? There are allegations that it's here, there's allegations that it's there, it's in this department, in that department, in this one's office, in that one's office. It doesn't belong in any of those offices. It belongs where it belongs.
Is the $6,000 worth of furniture now taped up?
Well, the funny thing was that Joe Good said she went and she looked into the room where this furniture was, and she goes, it was being held up with books and boxes. I'm like, and we paid $6,000 for this stuff?
Well, it might be in somebody's living room. Who knows?
Who knows? I mean, this is what happens. So, you can't write this stuff. Just for anyone who may be going to Boston to visit Tuft's Medical Center, they're on strike. The nurses finally went out on strike, and they actually called me and asked me to go work up there today. I almost did it, Chip, and left you stuck here. $175 an hour. But I said, nah, I don't think so. 1,200 nurses, they're on strike. It's to occur. They went on strike this morning. So,
yeah. And
they went on strike with tears and with a great resolve. So, it's very interesting. We spoke about it on Monday about the Paw Sox. We know they're not coming to Fall River, but the Herald News decided to stick it right up everyone's backside and said, hey, it was a swing and a miss for Fall River. because we didn't even try.
Yeah.
It's better to try, at least.
Well, since we're talking about baseball, let's use a baseball analogy. You can't hit a home run unless you get in the batter's box.
That's it.
So you got to at least try. So.
And the thing is that nobody's trying in Fall River, and I think that's the scarier part of the whole thing.
They're trying, but they're trying at the Cape under the cover of darkness. We have all these clandestine missions going on.
Yeah, I know.
But we don't have any obvious attempts to bring this city back.
Well, and I'm about ready because Mark Dion wrote a column when shots fired meant so much more. Talking about the gun shooting in Fall River, which we know is going on. And he's making light of it in some ways, but again, he's not really making light of it. Yeah. But it brought to mind when there was no dashboard in a specific vehicle a few years ago. Mm-hmm. I think I know where the dashboard is.
Yeah,
it's in the party bus.
The party bus that stayed parked, that was supposed to be for the use of everyone, but stayed parked in an airport parking lot while the mayor was down there
at the Fontainebleau.
At the Fontainebleau, watching Mark Anthony and yep. Gloria Stefan.
Costing us $10,000 for all we know. I want to see that reimbursement form. That's for sure. And the thing that was funny that came up yesterday at the city council meeting, I'm keeping an eye on the clock, was the fact that they made specific budget cuts. And Sean Kadim said very clearly, doesn't mean that he's got to take it out of travel expenses. It's up to each department head, or it's up to the mayor on where he's going to take those cuts. So the mayor may still keep his $8,000 or $10,000 travel budget so he can go. Because God forbid he misses his $8,000 to $10,000 travels to Washington and Miami, which doesn't even belong to the Conference of Mayors. Yeah. you have to laugh at this.
Yeah, and he's right. It's getting to be, shots fired did mean a lot more in the old days, and it's becoming unfortunately, it's becoming the norm, not the exception to the rule. And Fall River has become a very, very dangerous place. And
especially when you got your kids going to high school,
right. and
they're going to be stabbed if they don't join a gang.
And you know something? One of the primary reasons is the people that we're bringing in a lot of drug addicts, and they may not be criminals, but criminals follow drug addicts because those are their consumers.
That's right.
Those are their consumers, and then after they come in, as we saw the 2 arrests in Fall River of 30-some people. They were selling it for 3 times what it was in Providence, so it's a growth industry. So what normally follows the money? Gangs.
Right.
Gangs, gangs throughout this country, one of their primary sources of income is drug dealing. So and if you don't nip it in the bud, it's going to only get worse.
And always remember that dealing drugs, buying drugs, is supporting terrorism.
That's right.
And that's what they're doing, because that's where opiates come from. That's where heroin comes from. It comes from the countries that have poppy plants.
That's right.
And those are all terroristic countries. And this is what happens. So your heroin junkie son or your heroin junkie daughter or your heroin junkie boyfriend or girlfriend are supporting terrorism.
Yeah,
so let's call it what it is.
Yeah. And as I said, these things are, they grow, and they grow at an extremely high rate when a community begins to disintegrate. And it disturbs me to see the mayor supporting expansions of all these facilities and courting new ones. Now, rather than saying enough is enough, we have enough low-income housing, we have enough treatment centers, and this should be the end of it. We should be cutting back, not expanding. This is not a growth industry that we want to be in.
That's for sure.
Stay angry.
Stay angry. We'll see you on Friday.